Good afternoon. I'm James Exum, also known as Sakshi in the world of yoga. Today I will be continuing my series on paradoxes that are found within yoga philosophy. And today we will deal with the topic of the beginning without end. And there is the paradox. Is there such a thing as a beginning without an end? Well, certainly there is. In this sense, in this case, I'm talking about the beginning and the end of God or the Creator, or in yoga philosophy, Brahman, the Creator. You have a God that is a Creator that is without a beginning and without an end. He's outside of space and time, such as the human soul is a spark of the divine, and it too is infinite and is outside of space and time. So I'll be reading from my latest text that I produced on this subject, or on the subject of paradoxes. There'll be 10 of them altogether. This should be number 6, I believe, could be number 5. I'm an older man, so the numbers aren't as important to me as the information I'm trying to share with you. So we'll start with sort of a summary so you'll get a general idea of what I'm going to talk about, and then we'll get into the text itself. And what I do is I read from when you see me look this way, I'm reading from my monitor on my computer in my Word application, and that's where I store all my writings, all my papers and discourses and theses, or not theses, but essays and poems, and even I also do some fantasy work, just to amuse myself and my friends, fiction. But I mostly deal in nonfiction as a yoga commentarian in the field of religious comparisons. And I don't consider yoga a religion. I consider it's the science of living or the science of life. And I'm not a practicing Hindu, and I don't follow the pantheon of the Hindus. I'm strictly into yoga and its philosophy. I'm an old yogi, and that's my area of expertise. So we'll start with a summary. Brahman is presented as the infinite, beginningless essence that underlies all existence and experience. It, and when I say it, I'm not being discourteous to God or the Creator. It is the old term that was used in the early days of yoga text and writings to describe Brahman, it. He is neither male nor female. I'm using the word he because we have to speak in some language, the pronoun he, but in actuality, it is neither male or female. So, in this underlying of all existence and experiences, it is realized through the dissolution of the individual self into pure consciousness. This is how you realize yourself, is through the dissolution of the individual self. A lot of times in modern psychology and modern science and modern literature, we think of the self as the ego or the id. Those are terms used by Jung and by Sigmund Freud and other men of distinction that is their field of practice. This union is the ultimate goal of yoga. If we can reunite the soul with the Creator, then we have achieved the ultimate goal of yoga, and it's called moksha in Sanskrit. And when that's done, that's where the seeker transcends illusion and rests in the eternal now. The teachings emphasize that Brahman is not separate from the world, but interwoven with every aspect of being, inviting a return to the undivided source through silent awareness. Yes, this I truly believe. Then I have two or three bullet points here, actually three that I'll read to you. Brahman as pure consciousness, and then here's the description. Sankara, that's Adi Shankara, the great narrator and great thinker on the subject of yoga from the 8th century Common Era. I got him a bit confused yesterday with Patanjali, and I apologize for that. Sankara describes Brahman as beyond attributes. In other words, you cannot attribute anything to Brahman. You can't say he's a he or a she. You can't say he's a good god or a bad god. You can't even say he's a god. You can say he is the creator, though. You can't say he's just or unjust. That type of God is outside of the science of yoga. That's more in the area of religion. As being beyond all attributes, they also include thought and speech, accessible only through direct realization, when ignorance is lifted and the self is understood as one with Brahman. That's the goal of yoga. Again, it's called moksha. Union of self and infinite being. And here's that definition. The spiritual journey involves the transcending the finite self, which is what we are. We have a limited time on this earth. The finite self, through discrimination and detachment. I like discernment over discrimination, culminating in the highest yoga, the union of the individual with the infinite or the creator. Yoga as a cyclical inward path. I highlight yoga as a discipline and revelation that uncovers the infinite within each moment, guiding the seeker. And you, if you're listening to my discourses, you are probably a seeker within the realm of yoga, the teachings of yoga. That highlights guiding with each moment, guiding the seeker inward to the silent witness beyond appearances. Let me repeat that. I kind of messed it up a bit, so let me try it again. I highlight yoga as a discipline and revelation that uncovers the infinite within each moment. And by doing so, I guide the seeker inward to the silent witness which is beyond appearances. You cannot see your soul, that quiet little voice that whispers suggestion to you. The soul cannot interfere in your earthly doings, your karma. It can merely quietly suggest a dharmic path for you, the path of righteousness. Now let's get into the main text, if you don't mind. And here we go. In the vast tradition of Advaita Vedanta, now you can look that up, the illustrious sage Sankara speaks of Brahman not merely as a metaphysical principle, but as the essence that illumines all experience. The sun lights the earth, and if there are no clouds in the way, or fog, or anything of that nature, and it's not nighttime, it's daytime, the sun gives energy to everything that it touches on the earth. It gives warmth, and it illuminates it. But the sun is not affected by what it illuminates. And so it is with the soul. The soul illuminates our mind, which is a non-physical element of our intellectual and brain thinking process. But the soul is not affected by this, and neither is Brahman. Shankara's voice reverberates through the ancient commentaries, clarifying that Brahman is, quote, pure consciousness, without attributes, beyond thought and speech, as I've already said. He insists that while words may gesture towards the infinite, true understanding dawns only in direct dawns. It like the morning dawn, the dawn of the sun, the dawn of the day, only in direct realization. With the veil of ignorance, when the veil of ignorance is lifted and the self is revealed as one with Brahman. Sankara's narration is both subtle and profound. The quest is not to acquire knowledge, but to dissolve the knower into the knowing itself. And there's a phrase for that in Sanskrit and in yogic philosophy called tat tavam asi, thou art that. And it is the thunderous whisper echoing through Shankara's teachings. The finite self, which is also called the jiva, is but a ripple upon the unfathomable ocean of Brahman. The seeker, guided by discrimination, which is viveka, and detachment, which is vairagya, journeys beyond the ephemeral play of forms into the undifferentiated grounds, excuse me. Let me try that again. Beyond the ephemeral play of forms in the undifferentiated ground where all opposites are reconciled. Whew, got through that. Again, I'm old. I also have Parkinson's, a form of Parkinson's, which affects my speech pattern and my ability to pronounce certain words at certain times. Otherwise, I'm fine. Myself, I give luminous reflections on yoga and the consciousness, and I further the exploration with a contemporary reflections. I write of the mystical tension between the world of appearances and the silent witness at its heart. For myself, yoga is both the path and the revelation, the disciple that strips away illusion, and the insight that recognizes the infinite in each moment. Being a bit redundant there, sorry about that. I invite everyone to consider that the journey is not linear, but cyclical. We're not going in a straight line here, folks. We're going in cycles, spiraling inward to the core of our being, where the finite mind, the mind, bows before the majesty of the self. In the convergence of Shankara's ancient wisdom and my modern insight, the teachings become clear. Brahman is not elsewhere, not other, but the very reality interwoven with every breath and thought. The paradox dissolves in practice, as the seeker learns to rest in that which neither comes nor goes, the eternal now. The beginning, the eternal now. The beginning of Brahman is a paradox. You see, time is basically a human invention, and we break things down into segments. We break the day into 24 hours. We break the months, the year into months. We break the rotation, the number of rotation days that it takes to rotate around the sun into a solar year, which is 365 and a quarter days. These are human concepts. Dogs and cats don't worry about time. I mean, their tummy tells them it's time to eat, and their physical activities when they've reached a point of near exhaustion tells them it's time to sleep. And they may become accustomed to you coming home at a certain time, but that's not, they don't have a clock on their little paws or wrist or feet. It's just a matter of habit with them. Like a child has the habit of starting to cry in the cradle when it's hungry. It's not telling time, but people will say to their visitor, oh, it's time for him to eat or she to eat. But they have no concept of time. The flying south for the winter is just a change in climate. It's not that they're looking at a calendar, with the months and the weekends spelled out and the days of the week spelled out, which are named after the gods, by the way. Thor's Day and Moon Day. So to approach Brahman is to undertake the highest yoga, the union of finite self and infinite self-being. In stillness, in silence, the seeker finds the source, not in the distant past, but in the eternal now. In the words of the Upanishads, those are the great writings, from Brahman the world arises. In Brahman the world exits. In Brahman the world dissolves. In other words, creation, preservation, and dissolution. The journey of yoga is the journey of returning home to the undivided, unconditioned, limitless Brahman. Let the discourse end where the path begins, in the silence awareness of the self, the yoga god, Brahman. The beginning of Brahman is a paradox. It is ground from which all beginnings arise, yet it itself is beginningless. Brahman does not, people go, well, in certain religions, there's certain questions. When you get into the philosophy of different religions and comparative philosophy, people will say, well, who created God? Well, God was not created, God was. He has no beginning, he has no end. He's outside of space and time. So you can't put him on the earthly register, so to speak, and the human mind has certain limited capabilities. It cannot think on the plane of God. It cannot think on the plane of eternity. It cannot think outside of space and time, because we're within space and time. We created the time, and we limit ourselves by thinking we know how much space is out there, how big the universe is, and the light years it takes to cross it, and so forth and so on. And we even go into theories of its expanding. And it started from a singularity that was smaller than a human suitcase that you can put on an airplane. And out of that suitcase, the Big Bang Theory, and it is a theory, the Big Bang, like the theory of evolution, the Big Bang says that everything in the universe was compressed down to such a level, everything that exists, energy and mass that is out there, was confined to a space, so to speak, a square footage, a cubic footage, the size of a traveling suitcase. Well, I have had scientists as friends, some of the teachers over at UT that taught science, various sciences, engineering and physics and such, and even Dr. Wheeler, John Wheeler, when he was teaching out here at UT in Austin. I'm in Austin, have been here for 50 years. We had discussions on this subject, and we agreed to disagree on certain things, but on most things we agreed, because he had a mind that leaned also, like Oppenheimer, who was one of his teachers, so to speak. He had a mind that leaned towards the philosophy of yoga also, as did Einstein to a degree, as did Newton, as did several famous writers, Emerson and so forth. And there that is. So the beginning of Brahman is a paradox. It is ground from which all beginnings arise, yet itself is beginningless. To approach Brahman is to undertake the highest yoga, the union of finite self and infinite being. In stillness and silence, the seeker finds the source, not the distant past, but in the eternal now. In the words of the Upanishad, from Brahman the world arises, in Brahman the world exits, in Brahman the world dissolves. Now, back to where I was. The journey of yoga is the journey of returning home to the undivided, the unconditioned. Let the discourse end where the path begins, in the silent awareness of the self. And actually, I think I've said enough on the subject of the paradox of, who created God? Where did he come from? What was here before him? And I'm going to end it right there. This is going to be one of my shorter discourses. I can add to it later on by doing another discourse on this same subject, the expanded version. But for now, I'm going to end it. And so I always say, be good to yourself, be good to others, be good to your friends, family, and even strangers, and spread this civility, and who knows, in 5 or 10 or 15 years, we may return to the revised world, a revised world, from which we were before the year 2016. And so if you enjoyed this, thank you. If you didn't, that's okay too. But I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.